There's always a challenge in growing crops, and that, of course, includes alfalfa. One of those, Aphanomyces. Which race is it, and what's the problem? Dr. Don Miller is going to explain it to us today. Don, of course, is Director of Product Development with Alforex. And, Don, what about Aphanomyces Race 3? And when we start talking about races and the debate of what's here and what's not, how do we explain it all?
Yeah, alfalfa breeders are always trying to breed for resistance to anything that might limit production. And these diseases, especially in a year like this year where it was wet, we tend to get more rib diseases and also some damping off diseases. And so Aphanomyces is one of those pathogens that we worry about in our breeding program. So, but also we want to know, do we have overall good disease resistance in our alfalfa varieties? And so the alfalfa researchers a number of years ago came up with a rating, what they called a disease resistance index, that sort of summarizes what level of combined resistance do you have to all the major alfalfa diseases. In the early years, we had bacterial wilt, fusarium wilt, anthracnose, verticillium, and phytophthora root rot, which was really specific for wet soils. And so what we did was look at each variety and at 100 plants, and they exposed them to each one of the diseases and found out, did we have high resistance, which was more than 50% of the plants having resistance, or do we have resistance or moderate resistance and low resistance? And we actually gave each one of those levels of resistance a score. High resistance had a score of 5, and so if we had 5 diseases, the top score of high resistance is 5 times 5. We had 25 out of 25 as on that disease-resistant index. But over time, we added more diseases, the Aphanomyces race 1, and so that scale now, we looked at 6 diseases, and if they had HR for those 6, it was 6 times 5 and 30 out of 30. And eventually we ended up, race 2 was another Aphanomyces that we were finding out in the field, and so we started screening for that, and eventually came up with 7 times 5, or 35 out of 35 on a combined resistance scale. Well, now our alfalfa breeders are looking that there's possibly more races of Aphanomyces out there. But right now, there's a lot of talk on Aphanomyces race 3, but really it hasn't been officially recognized by the National Alfalfa Variety Review Board, and so we don't have the resistance check, so we can't really determine, do we have an HR or an R. And so what breeders are doing now is just screening for all the different isolates of Aphanomyces and trying to get combined resistance until we can actually come up with the level of resistance that we have to these new diseases.
So we haven't gotten the final numbers in yet at all. We're still working on it.
Yeah, we're a little bit premature on that Aphanomyces race 3 until the National Alfalfa Variety Review Board comes up with a resistant and a susceptible check for that pathogen. We really can't make that claim of having high resistance to it because we don't know, we don't have the checks to measure it. And so we will eventually, but right now we're a little bit premature on saying we have high resistance to Aphanomyces race 3 or any other race that beyond race 1 and race 2.
But the research will continue. Thanks, Don. Dr. Don Miller, Director of Product Development with Alforex, as we talk about Aphanomyces race 3 and the debate over it, as well as that disease resistance number on our Alforex Ask the Expert program.